The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
Tamer Gabounia, the Deputy Minister of Health, names the rate of vaccination in hospitalized and severely COVID patients and says that vaccination is the only solution in the current situation. Statistics tell us that most of the infected people were unvaccinated. Also, most of the people who are admitted to the hospital are unvaccinated. That's about 98% or more. Resuscitation affects less than 1% of vaccinated persons, and there have been several deaths. The vaccine protects against hospitalization and death. Thus, the vaccine is the only solution in the current situation, said Gabounia.
Starting this month, the electricity trading platform Electra is launched, where electricity consumers and producers will meet. The platform allows market participants to see all proposals of electricity trade in one space, so the participants can form their own requirements and publish them at the platform. As David Gulushvili, the head of the project, declares, online trade will simplify the process of purchasing electricity for the customers and at the same time will help them to develop market trading skills.
We believe that the platform Electra will play an important role in adapting its participants to the organized electricity markets during the transition period. It will assist the market participants in both finding buyers or sellers of electricity, as well as prepare market participants to operate an organized online wholesale market platform in the future, Gulushvili declares. Within the framework of the energy sector reform, an energy exchange was established in Georgia. Its full operation was planned for July 1st, 2021, but delayed until January 2022. Full market liberalization is expected in the next 5 years.
The subsistence minimum of a working-age male amounted to 216 lari in September, which was 32 lari more compared to the same period of the last year. On the other hand, it indicates the price increase. Preliminary data show from the Statistics Office of Georgia. The increase in the subsistence minimum is related to high inflation, as inflation hit a record high in the country for the last 10 years and amounted to 12.3%. As of September, the subsistence minimum for average consumers stood at 192 lari approximately, which was up by 29 lari compared to the previous year.
You are watching Checkpoints, hosted by Elena Kvanchilashvili and myself. I'm David Jalgore. We are here to tell you more about business and economics.
10 p.m. sharp, totally ready to start. We both know, David, that the state can either be an enabler to doing business or become a big barrier. Pandemic seems to be staying with us in one form or the other in coming 2022, or quite a big part of it if we look at the currently stalled vaccination process in Georgia. So looking at the draft state budget for 2022 is more than important.
Couldn't agree more with you on this, Elena. So let us start highlighting the top priorities of this document and the main parameters of the state budget for the next year.
More so that the whole week at the Parliament was dedicated to reviewing this first draft and submitting some changes to it. We will follow up on that as well later, but for now let us summarize these discussions among the members of the Georgian Parliament and Deputy Minister Giorgi Gagauridze.
The 2022 state budget of Georgia has been planned with a 9.5% economic growth forecast, and the budget deficit will be 4.3% of GDP next year. The Deputy Minister of Finance also told the legislators that the budget deficit should be reduced to 3.3% in 2023. The upper ceiling of the governmental debt is defined by 52.1% of GDP.
As for the budget expenditures, it will decrease by about 1 billion lari compared to 2021 and will be around 19 billion lari in total. The main reason for this decrease is the reduction of costs related to the pandemic by 850 million lari. The budget for the management of the COVID-19 is 500 million lari, which is 310 million lari less than this year. The forecast index of the incomes has been increased by 751 million lari and constitutes around 19 billion.
We reduced COVID-related expenditures in a draft budget 2022 as we deeply hope that the vaccination rate will increase and new infection cases will be down. This is how the Deputy Minister of Finance, Giorgi Kakauridze, explained the reasons for the reduction of COVID-related expenses to 500 million lari in the draft budget 2022. However, Kakauridze notes if funding increases are needed, then the budget for other programs will be reduced. We expect that the number of infected people will decrease. The cost of purchasing vaccines is also included in a budget of 500 million gel. Although this amount is enough to treat approximately 300,000 citizens. We deeply hope that the rate of vaccination will increase, while the infection will be down and 500 million gel will be enough. Otherwise, we will have to reduce the funds allocated for other programs.
Let us then proceed with the salary policy. The total salary of 112,000 people employed in the ministries will increase by 20 million lari in 2022 to around 2 billion lari. We also know that salaries for the teachers will be increased by 100 lari from January the 1st.
By the way, the Deputy Minister declares that salaries in the public sector are in a catastrophic condition. He knows that it's necessary to increase it, and according to him, the Georgian government is working to find some resources to regulate salaries in the public sector when introducing the second version of the 2022 draft budget. As for the long-term settlement mechanism, the government must approve the rule of annual salary increase in the public sector by July 1st next year. But for that, the first steps need to be taken and a certain increase in salaries in 2022, said Kakauridze.
In the process of discussing the state budget draft 2022, there was another interesting topic related to the main reason why the Georgian government refused to take the loan, the second tranche of the 75 million euro from the European Union. As the Deputy Minister of Finance declared at the Parliament in response to a question from MP Salome Samadashvili, there were two reasons. First, it was a critical position of the EU that the judicial reform had not been implemented, and there was a threat that the EU would not transfer that amount to Georgia anyways. And secondly, the debt reduction policy was also the reason.
We refused the European Union loan because there was a risk that the money would not be transferred. In general, reform-based financial agreements are very important. But unfortunately, there had been such cases in the previous years when we lost grants or loans due to the lack of certain reforms. After the consideration of the draft budget by the committee, the Budget and Finance Committee will hold a resuming sitting on October 18.
Before that, here are the detailed numbers on how the total budget worth of 18.4 billion is distributed among different ministries. Take a close look. We will be comparing how the picture changes after the resumed sitting on October 18. The Ministry of Refugees, Labour, Health and Social Affairs, 5.94 billion lari next year, less than 151 million compared to 2021. Ministry of Infrastructure, 2.84 billion, an increase of 323 million lari from 2021. The Ministry of Education, 1.64 billion lari, 113 million
million lari more than this year. According to the document, it is planned to increase the basic salaries of teachers by 100 lari from 2022. Budget Ministry of Culture and Sports, 343 million lari, decreased by 8.21 million lari from 2021. Ministry of Environment and Agriculture, 577 million lari, also decreased by 51 million lari from 2021. Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development, 741 million lari, an increase of 98 million compared to the approved plan from 2021. Ministry of Justice, 268.4 million lari, 28 million lari less than in 2021. Ministry of Foreign Affairs, 175.5 million lari, 5 million more than in 2021. Ministry of Defense, 918 million lari, 12 million lari less than in 2021. Ministry of Internal Affairs, 800 million lari, 20 million lari more than in 2021.
This week, the International Monetary Fund published its World Economic Outlook, which shows that the global economy recovery continues amid a resurging pandemic, and that poses unique policy challenges and requires strong multilateral effort. According to the updated outlook, the global economy is projected to grow 6% in 2021 and 4.9% in 2022. The 2021 global forecast is unchanged for the April 2021 outlook, but with offsetting revisions. Prospects for emerging markets and developing economies have been marked down for 2021, especially for emerging Asia. By contrast, the forecast for advanced economies is revised up. These revisions reflect pandemic developments and changes in policy support. The 0.5 percentage point upgrade for 2022 derives largely from the forecast upgrade for the advanced economies, particularly in the United States, reflecting the anticipated legislation of additional fiscal support in the second half of 2021 and improved health metrics more broadly across the group.
Thank you, David, for this brief summary. This outlook actually gives grounds to very interesting analysis on Georgia as well. There are 2 points primarily that I would like to share with our viewers and followers. First, Georgia ranks 16th in the world with the highest inflation rate. This is stated in the Global Economic Review published by the International Monetary Fund. According to the fund's forecast, Georgia will have 13.05% inflation by the end of 2021. Higher inflation is expected in only 15 more countries. In addition, the IMF predicts that from 2022, inflation will fall to 3.17%. By the end of 2021, according to the IMF, the highest inflation in the world will be in the following countries: Venezuela, Sudan, Suriname, Yemen, Zimbabwe, Iran, Zambia, Angola, Libya, Turkey, Turkmenistan, Comoros, Nigeria, Haiti, Sierra Leone, and Georgia. And second, Georgia's GDP per capita will increase by USD 533 compared to the previous year and will reach 4,807 USD. With this indicator, Georgia is on the 106th place among 196 countries in the world and is among Iraq and Moldova. At the same time, according to the IMF, in 2022, Georgia's GDP per capita will increase by another 489 USD and it will reach $5,297. In 2019, before the pandemic, Georgia's GDP was $4,693 US, but as a result of the 2020 economic crisis, it fell by $418 to $4,275 USD.
But Elena, World Economic Outlook was not the only reason that International Monetary Fund came into the focus on the checkpoints, right?
Definitely, David. Another big reason was, of course, the scandal around the most influential international financial institution globally. We can now definitely say that the IMF chief, Kristalina Georgieva, survived the China scandal. The IMF executive board announced it had full confidence in her leadership and ability to continue to effectively carry out her duties. At the heart of the board's deliberations was an inquiry published last month that accused Georgieva of pressuring World Bank staffers to boost China's ranking in the annual Doing Business report for 2018. The checkpoints is, of course, in the middle of global events as well. Here is what Jihad Azur, the director of the Middle East and Central Asia Department at the International Monetary Fund, told the checkpoints on the issue. The scandal that IMF is in, Kristalina Georgieva will remain International Monetary Fund boss. Despite this China scandal, what does this say about IMF itself and also about the trust towards International Monetary Fund as, I would say, the most influential international financial institution?
Well, as you know, this issue has been addressed by the board of the fund, and the board of the fund issued a statement in this regard. The key issue in your question is about fund standards in terms of transparency, in terms of accountability. As you know, throughout our various publications, throughout our work on bilateral, multilateral, the fund observes and enjoys high credibility in terms of standards, in terms of practices, be it in our flagship publications internationally as well as also regionally. And also we have in our rules and in our practices observed, and we still observe, high standards in terms of transparency and accountability. Our analytical work is regularly praised and used by various sources as a strong and reliable source of information.
Thank you for regular interviews on very important issues for Georgia and for the region. Thank you, Mr. Azur, for taking
Thank you
that.
very much for having me. Thank you.
David, briefly, let me then mention here that next week we will run an interview with Jihad Azur, the director of the Middle East and Central Asia Department at the International Monetary Fund, on the regional outlook that the fund intends to publish soon, covering Georgia and more.
And now, time to present the new Forbes English edition, our outlook on everything that is interesting to the business community and beyond in Georgia and beyond. So here and now, the most influential publication and the best guide to success. Forbes Georgia presents its new English edition.
This is Niko Kwaretskhelia's corner on the Forbes office, a young entrepreneur whom Georgia lost just a few weeks ago and whom the whole country anonymously called the boy of the future. He was indeed a particularly bright star whose name and hard work will forever remain in our memory. Niko never lacked recognition. Even before he passed away, he was the youngest winner of Forbes 30 Under 30 elite list. He was a member of the big business family of PMG and Forbes Georgia, and despite his age, he managed to leave an amazing mark on Georgian business and society. Niko created the first Georgian social media platform, Feeds, and so he's on the inside cover of the English language edition of Forbes as the representative of last year's Under 30s list. Also, from now on, his photo will be displayed in the main workspace of the Forbes office. So let's start with the fall English edition review.
Let me introduce you to the winners of the 30 Under 30 Forbes list. Meet Nicolas Donadze, a Georgian professional working at the epicenter of the European financial industry. I will tell you about a dream come true in America, Mondo, which means the world in Italian, but is fully associated with the Georgian brand. It has made a name for itself with its distinctive and best coffees since 2014. The story is connected to Giorgi Berite. You'll also learn about the idea of the new Liberty in English. Liberty Bank CEO Vasil Khodeli talks about it with Forbes Georgia.
Rustam Aysuradze is on the cover of Forbes Georgia's English language autumn edition. The headline of this story was chosen carefully, highly qualified partner. The reason why we chose Rusa as the main protagonist of this month edition is related to her professional achievement and past path. The general public got to know BLB's managing partner recently, as Rusa and her American partners are met with a high-profile lawsuit involving defending the interests of multiple world chess champion Nona Gaprindashvili against Netflix. However, this is a completely different story, and before you get to it, you should get to know Rustam Aysuradze first.
If the market capitalization of the world's leading technology giants were the country's gross domestic product, they would be a member of the G7. You'll read the comparison of the technology giants and countries filled with various infographics, numbers, and detailed figures. Top 10 risks in the business management processes in 2021. What are the threats that businesses and analysts are facing this year? How much do the countries of the world spend on education? The leader of this rating is still Norway. You'll find the full list in the new edition of Forbes Georgia. This is just a small list of successful stories and people in this month's English edition. We also share tips, answer key questions, and calculate ratings using our usual analysis. So follow us and read Forbes, an experienced guide to business and economics.
After teasing the most influential business publication, we would like to introduce you to one relatively young company on the market. Not so long ago, sparkling wine Zhuzhuna appeared and, by the way, sparked a great interest. What is more important, Zhuzhuna has already crossed Georgia's borders and earned the interest of many foreign investors as well. Tatia Gagiashvili will update us on Zhuzhuna's current and future plans. Co-founder Mate Abesadze is in the spotlight of the checkpoints.
It's been a while since Zhuzhuna appeared on the market, and during this time, sparkling wine Zhuzhuna became part of festivals, bars, clubs, private parties, and pop culture in general. So, what made Zhuzhuna popular in the Georgian market?
The success story begins with the product itself. So, we think that the product and the way of distribution we started it was kind of it was not you couldn't find the same kind of product on the market, so it was like the brand in the blue ocean. So the product, the semi-sparkling wine, we can say that Zhuzhuna is the first Georgian semi-sparkling wine, and it created some buzz with the younger generation, because in the bars, you know that not a lot wine was kind of consumed by the customers. But after Zhuzhuna appeared, actually it was a much easier to drink. You could kind of get one portion for yourself, and with the money spent, the customers, it was much comfortable for the customers to buy a portion rather than to buy a full bottle. As well as for the cocktails, the portion was the right thing, because, as you know, Zhuzhuna appeared with the taps installed in the bars. So it means that it was like poured like a beer. So it was kind of innovation on the Georgian market to have wine on the tap. It's like the first was like the product itself, the wine that made the buzz, and the second was that it was distributed with the right form, kind of. So that created the success as we had.
After this all, you managed to export the product. Negotiations are underway with several foreign companies, including China and Japan too. And of course, Chinese and Japanese businessmen are interested in Zhuzhuna. Now, Mate, tell us more about this export and interest.
First of all, the interest was with the Chinese market, and they found this concept kind of very interesting, you know. And by the end of the summer, we have sent an test kind of shipment of 4,000 bottles. And right now we are waiting for the response, how it went, and how the market actually received our product. And afterwards, it was the Japanese market. On the Japanese market, it was a different story because the first kind of, with the help of Enterprise Georgia and with the help of Georgian Embassy in Japan, we managed to send a couple of test bottles to the market. And these test bottles were tasted by the really well-known sommelier. And he liked the product itself. He had the same questions about the packaging, but the product was so well received that afterwards one of the company, the importer company, was interested with our product, and she got all the concept, and she was like so amazed with this concept that right now we don't have any barriers of selling. So we have managed to sign some exclusive contract with them as well on the Japanese market. And they are signed to take, each year they are signed to take much more of Jujunas than this test ship of 12,000 bottles for the Japanese market.
In the nearest future, the company Jujuna also plans to enter the markets of Europe and the Americas. And also, to sum up, what are your future plans about this? And in general, what kind of future plans does Jujuna have?
Well, first of all, right now, the plans are to stable the quality, stable the production process, and then to kind of emerge on this markets on a full scale. Not like the small shipments, you know. For the US and for the European markets, we will send the test shipments and let's see how it goes. And for the Japanese and Chinese markets, actually, we will start to develop our brand on the correct steps, to take the correct steps. And also, we plan to visit both markets by the end of the year, beginning of next year, to have the correct understanding what's the deal with them is, you know, to kind of afterwards meet the volume they will take as a product on their market. So first of all, right now we are really glad our product got exported, and right now the plans are to kind of stabilize and even add some additional equipment for our production process to meet the standards and keep the quality we have right now.
A program for Georgian studies at Harvard's Davis Center has recently been launched. The new program is being financed by the Georgian government through a $2.3 million grant, which will support research and scholarly exchange, teaching, and outreach. It will start in January 2022. What will this program bring to both Georgians and Americans? The Checkpoints interviewed the head of the program, Stephen Jones, and professor at Mount Holyoke College and Georgia's Ilias State University.
The opening of the Center of Georgian Studies at an American university like Harvard is called to be unprecedented. Courses in history and the social sciences covering topics in Georgia and the South Caucasus will be offered every year beginning in January 2022. Visits of Georgian researchers to Harvard, visits of the Americans to Georgia, scientific cooperation, seminars, workshops, and the teaching of the Georgian language in Harvard. This is a short description of the program initiated, authored, and led by Kartvelologist and the professor Stephen Jones. Speaking to us, he said that the goal and mission of the Center of Georgian Studies will be even broader.
We need a place where journalists can come. We need a place where we can talk honestly and objectively about Georgia. We want to be able to communicate to Americans that Georgia is strategically important to the United States. It is, after all, really, well, Armenia, we could maybe consider democratic now, but I think Georgia still is the most promising democracy in the South Caucasus, although, of course, there are problems always in any young democracy. But it's important for us to maintain American interest, I would say, in the region, and to help Georgia as much as we can in promoting democratic institutions and ideas.
The idea to establish a Center for Georgian Studies at Harvard Davis Center came to Professor Jones 7 years ago. However, then he did not get the necessary funding. Several months ago, after consultations with Prime Minister Garibashvili and Minister of Education Mikhail Chkhenkeli, an agreement was reached. As a result, the center was funded with $2.3 million from the state budget, which will ensure the work of the program for the next 3.5 years. With this funding, it will be possible to connect Georgian universities with Harvard. The program leader has big plans in this direction.
We will also encourage collaboration between Georgian universities and Harvard, which means, collaborative projects I find always very rich because they bring so many different ideas into a particular project. So that obviously is going to help Georgian scholarship. It's going to help American scholarship. I think one of the things, to be honest with you, that Georgian scholarship needs right now is more integration with Western scholarship. I'm not saying that Western scholarship is going to teach Georgians. Georgians have great ideas and great scholars too, but at the university level, for example, among undergraduates and graduates, I think there is work to be done in order to bring them into, if you like, the sort of global scholarship. Georgia is rather isolated right now, particularly when it comes to students and their competitiveness vis-a-vis other students in other countries. We need to help Georgians compete in a scholarly fashion.
Besides, an international conference is planned to be held at the Harvard Davis Center next year within the framework of the Georgian Studies, where international and Georgian researchers and professors will gather and discuss current actual issues.
Very exciting indeed, and not less exciting story of Eleanor de Kemoularia. Two important reasons to showcase this first story of many more to come. First, it is 100 years of Georgia-French relations, and Claude Kemoularia was the member of the first immigration wave. And secondly, this is the start of BMG's cooperation with Speech. From now on, the checkpoints will also be able to present very interesting stories and provide motivational, inspirational business speech. Here is the first story.
Terrorism has no excuse whatsoever, but the problem is difficult.
The United Nations in New York, on the eve of the opening of its 16th Assembly session, is plunged into mourning upon the passing of Dag Hammarskjöld. More than 8 years ago...
Claude de Kemoularia was a banker and a diplomat. He was François Mitterrand's trusted person and a negotiator with the Arab countries. He also served as France's permanent representative and ambassador to the United Nations in the 1980s. He was also an advisor of the Banque Paribas CEO for International Affairs from 1968 to 1982. He was also a special advisor to Prince Rainier of Monaco, and he was also a member of the board of directors of the French fashion company Nina Ricci. He wrote a book in 2002 called Une vie à tire-d'aile, which was also translated in Georgian. My name is Eleanor de Kemoularia. I'm the granddaughter of Claude de Kemoularia, and I've been living in the US for the last 10 years. My grandfather could be a little bit tough on us when we were growing up. Obviously, he was very well known internationally. He had the most enviable positions, in his career. So there was a lot of pressure on us as we were growing up to succeed and carrying on his legacy. Looking back on all this, I appreciate all of his, teachings around this, and I know that today when I have, professional events where I meet diplomats and important peoples, his teachings and his ability to push me and be very curious in the world is helping me today meet people and talk about different issues in the world. One of his first advice was listen before you speak. And that's how, when we were little, we would listen before we would have any opinion. because when you listen, you first learn. And if you are going to talk, then make sure that you know your subject by heart. That was, I think, one of the biggest advice from him. Resilience, hard work. Obviously, if you want to achieve something in life, you need to put in the work. It's not about being a genius, it's about working hard. And I think everybody who knew my grandfather could say this about him, that he was incorruptible, and that's why he was able to achieve a lot of different things in his life. One of the things that he was able to achieve that a few men did in his lifetime was being able to bring, Israel as well as Palestine together at negotiations tables with his Club de Monaco, just for that particular reason. So for me, in my life, my last name is the most important thing. I went once to Georgia, actually to Tbilisi, when my grandfather was very lucky to do so and to travel with him. One of the other things that I would do was actually he would take us to the Georgian Ballet in Paris every year, so I was very lucky to see all the dances. I have to say that my grandfather was so very much proud, considered himself as Georgian. He was actually a little bit disappointed not to speak the language. And I have to say, I fell in love with the dancing and the polyphonic as well. So I'm very proud to say that I have a Georgian heritage. Like my grandfather, as I was telling you, had a very international career. I wanted to follow in the same footsteps, working for the French government. I wasn't a diplomat, but I think I did a little bit of my part. Basically, we helped facilitate French companies and French industries grow their footprint worldwide. So it was really facilitating business between the US and France. And now I work in something that I'm very passionate about, which is the innovation ecosystem. I used to work in startup acceleration programs where I would help mentoring them in order to get investment and to scale their business. The company is called Village Insights, and I'm very proud to be working with them and making that plunge into working in full innovation and in the full tech community, and basically launching myself in the startup world. So what makes a startup successful? A lot of people who are being first-time founders have a really hard time sharing their ideas of what their startup is going to be about, and because they're scared that their people are gonna steal the idea. But it's not really that. It's not about stealing the idea. What makes a startup successful is execution, execution, and execution. Everybody can have ideas, but if you don't have the execution, nobody's gonna, you're not gonna have a profitable startup. So in order to have that execution, you need to have a really good team that is motivated. So hiring and having the first, 1, 2, 3 founders who are motivated and passionate about what they do and are going to be able to execute on the plan and the playbook, that's what really is important. In order to succeed in the US, I think you have to be very passionate about what you do, but also be very tech savvy and have skills that are in innovation, in IoT, in healthcare, whether you're a doctor, you're a data scientist. Those are the functions that Americans are looking for. If you're looking to more work in support functions like marketing, HR, those are typical jobs that are usually in traditional field in the US by local Americans. But also network. Don't be afraid to reach out to people through social media platforms like LinkedIn or other types of professional platforms where you're actually asking for advice and connections. In America, it really works about who do you know and what you can offer to the country. Because it is a chosen immigration, you need to develop those skills that you have, and you also need to develop your social skills by making yourself reaching out to people, and basically you will find a community that suits you. Resilience, hard work, and a fighting mentality. But obviously I know that the Georgian people do possess all of these qualities.
Well, that's all for today then, I guess. We will meet you again on Sunday to discuss more on business and economics.
But before that, you know what to do. Follow us on bm.g and forbes.g till Sunday.
The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.